Sandy. Welcome to my channel.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Sandy is currently a executive and career coach, and she used to be a data science manager managing large teams at a large tech company where Sandy and I both worked. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Sandy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started my career and I was very interested in data and helping companies make the right decisions and make data based decisions. And I was so excited throughout my early career to see that grow as an industry and really be something people were relying on. And then I got more interested in the process and in how we were measuring things and how we were running teams. And when I transitioned into management, I actually really connected with being able to help individual people grow, figure out what they wanted. And I liked that so much more than the politics and the reorgs.
I hear
Um,
you.
so I
I
was
hear
really
you.
excited to work with people one on one. So that's what inspired a move over into the coaching space
Oh
so that
my
I could
gosh.
do that full time.
I realized something very special with coaching that I never experienced as a manager. I now am able to touch hearts, which I had never experienced on the same level before.
Yeah.
Being managers in a at least in a tech company type of setting, we do coach people, but it doesn't feel the same. It's not on the same level as being a coach. And the way I like to explain the difference is kind of like casual dating versus serious dating. Now as a coach, it really feels like we're really serious about growing and we're doing it together. And that level of commitment and that level of growth is what I have never experienced being a
Oh,
manager before.
yeah. I think as in managing, there's sometimes an opportunity to do it, but the problem is you're so divided. You've got your
Yes.
own career in mind, you've
Yes.
got the interests of the company, you've got
Yes.
like what team and role needs being filled. And
Yes.
when you're coaching, you're really able to sort of focus on like what does this person want and need and what is the right answer for them and how can I help them get it
Absolutely. Yes.
without like too many competing priorities.
Absolutely. It's the split in personality. Now, do I represent myself or do I represent the company?
Right? Yeah, I found myself so often being like, well, there are two answers to
Oh,
this.
yes. Yes, totally. So we do have a QR code on the screen, and this is how you can find Sandy to learn more about her coaching services. So today we would like to talk about advice for product managers coming from a data science angle and coming from a fellow executive and career coach. The first topic we want to talk about is how can PMs work well and cross functionally with their data science partners?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting about the PM relationship, especially at these big tech companies, was it was one of the most important ones, right? There's your manager and then there's the PM you're working with. And it can be absolute gold and you can work very well together, or it can really make your life hard if it's not a good pairing. And what I liked most about the best PMs that I've worked with is that they did have a data focus and that they
Mm.
understood some things about data or were willing to listen to the data scientist. I think there were a couple of key mistakes that can be made
Oh,
as a PM.
tell us.
Yes. First, I think, is expecting sort of like too much from the metrics and of not being a partner and just saying, hey, I'm going to throw this over the fence and like ask for an answer and not really sort of working together on what that is. So I think definitely partnering and thinking about what you're aiming for and sort of working through those problems together because they can't be done in isolation. I think another thing that's important is really working with the DS so that they're not treated like a service organization.
Hmm.
So instead of like asking for, oh, just pull me this data, you should go to
Right,
them with the business problem so that you
right.
guys can work together on that. And then I think just trusting their responses and their instinct. So the data structure is sometimes not intuitive, and there's something that you'll think is an easy answer, but it actually takes weeks. And so understanding that and sort of working together to get to the best answer is really helpful.
What happens when PMs don't share the problems that PMs are working on, and how does that affect DS?
Yeah, it can affect DS greatly because we are often very understaffed across the industry.
Mm,
So we need to be working on the highest priority problems. And so if we're not constantly connecting with our PM and understanding what the priorities are for leadership and for the team, we might be doing the wrong thing. We might be measuring the wrong thing.
mhm,
And data science has such a unique position to be able to bring the reality and the data and what's actually happening to the teams to help them prioritize projects, to help them understand experimental results. So if those two functions are out of sync, you can
mhm.
really lose a lot.
What happens when PMs say, "Hey, pull me this data. Hey, pull me that data." Like, what is your thought process when PMs say that?
It depends on the PM. So again, if it's a PM who understands data, and I've had some who even had like a background in analytics,
Mm,
then I sort of trust that they are asking for the right thing and that they are making the right sort of conclusions from it. If not, things can actually go very, very wrong. So, like, the relationship can go sour if they
mm,
feel like you're just sort of like demanding things from them for sure. And it doesn't feel like
mhm,
a partnership. I think that's true with anybody.
mhm,
And you could just get the wrong answer. So, I had a PM who was very interested in like a certain percentage that was success rate.
mm.
And the problem with that is that if you only put like 10 customers through and they all buy, you can get a 100% success rate, but
Right,
you've only sold 10 things.
right.
So they are sort of telling leadership, oh, we've got these huge raises, but it didn't really tell the full story of what was going on. So context can be lost and it
Mhm,
can actually like mess up the direction of the team for halves on end.
mm. And what happens when PMs don't engage with DS early enough?
I think that's when it can slow down the process, right?
Mhm,
So, similar to brainstorming, similar to working with your designers, you need everybody on the same page early. I
mhm,
think one thing that data science does well is sort of help look at things like the total addressable market.
right.
How many people would actually use this? Is it worth building for our company? Because for some of these large companies, if only a million people are going to use it, it's not worth the whole team's time.
Right.
So by engaging with the DS, they can really help you narrow down what the highest value opportunities are. Similar to research, right? I always say that data can tell you what's happening and research tells you why it's
Mhm.
happening. So being able to put those two together, you can really get a picture of what the users and the customers need.
Love that. I love that. Our second topic is how can PMs show that we are data conscious? How do we show that in interviews?
Yeah, that's really important, especially in a tight job market. They are looking for people who are really going to excel in their role. And it's just not acceptable anymore to not have a strong focus on data.
Mhm.
And typically, the companies aren't looking for PM candidates to be able to do all of the data, but they
Right.
want you to hit a couple of key points
Mm.
to be a data savvy PM. And so they might ask you some questions, and some important things you can hit on there are definitely benchmarking. So how do we know this is good? How
Mhm.
do we dig in and really understand like what success would be for the product? Another is I just mentioned finding the market size. So getting a sense of, is this something we should build? Is it worth our time? Is it going to be successful? And if there's a limited number of end users, it might not be.
Mhm.
Another important thing is to predetermine what success is. So you don't want to run an experiment and say, "Oh, we'll see what happens," right? You really want to focus on like how will we know that this is effective and how many people have to use the tool or how many sales have to happen for this to be important. And so calling that out in advance can help you be clear. And then another thing is to sort of call out your assumptions. So, again, if you're ever wrong as you're explaining data, as long as you've called out what your assumptions are, it's easy to go back and make some changes. So, I would say over articulate, focus on benchmarking, market size, and a clear picture of what success looks like from the start.
How do we know if we're setting the right success target? How do we know if it's too high or too low?
For what? Do you have like an example question that you've seen in an interview?
Mm, my example is more on the day to day.
Okay.
I often get feedback from teams, oh, this goal is too aggressive, or we're not sure if this is even achievable, and we just need to, just do it and see. I always This is a part where I always had questions.
Mm.
Like, how do we know if we're setting the right success target?
Are you talking about like for a length of time or for an individual project or both?
More about goal setting around projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, goal setting is it's huge and it's
Mhm.
often a risk. And you do have to look at some historical data to understand sort of like what has happened before. And
Right.
there's a few different things to weigh up, right? If the there's something being big enough and being worth our time, and then there's the reality of what it does. And sometimes those don't align. So typically when we're looking at goaling, we want to think about sort of like the top-down approach and the
Right.
bottoms-up approach and find a way to marry them. So in the top-down approach, it's what would be meaningful. And the things that we can think about is like if we took the same goal for 10 different projects or every quarter for 5 years, how much would we move it? Right? Like, how
Mhm.
different is the world in that case? And that's where you find things like 2% incremental goals might not be worth it. Unless
Mhm.
we're talking money, 2% of money is often enough. But so, sort of taking that look of is this enough? And then there's the looking back for historical evidence about what similar changes have done before and sort of how they've influenced the product to see how they build up. And then it's about setting sort of a combination of those where you understand the impact of each product and each project and how they are contributing together.
Mhm.
I usually put together spreadsheets on this. I have a process. I once showed it to an engineer who looked at it and he goes, thorough but arbitrary was his comment. But it was on a time when I was very close to goal. So,
Mhm.
you're doing your best and it's
Yeah.
about learning and iterating and then doing postmortems on the goal setting and
Right.
understanding what went wrong is important too. So, you know.
What happens when we're doing 0 to 1 and there's not a lot of historical data to benchmark anything?
Yeah, that is a tough one. When you're talking about 0 to 1
Mm.
products, I have a product measurement hierarchy that I use that walks through different steps where we
Mhm.
start with for brand new things, it's okay to take ship goals, right? Just get code complete, just
Right.
figure out what's happening.
Right.
Then looking at PMF and understanding for product market fit, how is this
Mhm.
working with our beta customers? What kind of feedback are we getting qualitatively?
Right.
And then it's about growing the product and making sure more people have access and are using it. And then it's about demonstrating value at scale. So I think it's just really understanding where the product or the team is in terms of maturity and adjusting the expectations for that. And I do see leaders tend to be like, oh, what's the measurement? What's the measurement? What's the measurement? And we can give you some sense of what we think it's going to do and why we bet on this.
Right.
But when it's early, it's better to take goals around really understanding that it's working before you bother growing it.
How
Uh,
how do we know that it's working? What are some of the indicators that we could use that tells us we might be close to product market fit, and how do we know?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the product and on sort of how many people you can get it in front of. For things like social media, it's very easy to do A/B tests for e-commerce as well to
Yeah.
get a sense of is this working? For things like B2B, where you're
Mm.
selling software, it's much harder because you
Yeah.
can't do tests, you don't have large market sizes. So that's when you have to look at things like beta groups and
Mhm.
user research feedback to get a sense of is this meeting people's needs? Sometimes it's a bet, but you have to take those bets. But what's always important is to look for the evidence that it's the right thing to do. And
Mhm.
so qualifying that. And sometimes that comes up as this is one of the top 3 user complaints we have. So we
Right.
have to fix it. And this is our best estimation. And this is why it will change. And I think just being clear with leadership as you're reporting it on which ones are bets and which ones are known improvements.
What if I'm a startup founder and I am working toward product market fit? And so I don't need to report up to
Mm.
leadership because I am the leadership. But as a startup founder, it's also hard for me to know what exactly counts as product market fit. Do you have any advice?
Sure. I think it's really about understanding like does this have legs? I think would
Mhm.
be our startup founder language.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting people it depends what stage you're in. So if you are out to users or to customers. The question is how many people are using it, and then especially how many people are returning. So it's
Mm,
very easy to see growing numbers because a new set of people tries it every day,
right.
but not seeing them come back. So
Mm,
if you're out to users, I would consider looking at growth and adoption, but also a little bit of retention and
retention.
whether or not people are sort of returning users or
Mm-hmm.
churn, and
Mm,
telling that story. If
mm-hmm.
you're literally not out to customers yet, I think it's just about sort of understanding the market need. And that's where you'd
Mm-hmm.
have to go to the user research, to the market research to
Right.
really understand like how well this could take off.
How much research is needed to validate that what we have is, has fit?
I think it depends on your risk tolerance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
It's
if
so
I'm
ambiguous.
yeah, if I'm investing every penny and mortgaged my house for it, like a whole lot of research
Yeah.
versus, if they're developing an app game, a mobile app, it's a little bit easier because the costs are lower. So I think that's a case by case answer,
Right. Right.
unfortunately, but it's really about just putting the user needs first, right? So I think you're fine if you continue to focus on what the customer base needs from you and
Mm-hmm.
not on what you need. So
Right.
whenever I've seen new features or new products come out and be like, we're going to be the new Snapchat, or we want to be the number one provider of whatever service in the industry, they're making their mission about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it's difficult because the path to success is through making it about solving a user problem, right? I want
True.
people to beg me to come to my site and to pay for my product because I'm doing something that needs doing. And if you don't focus on user value, that won't be the case.
This reminds me when I was working in a large tech company, our North Star was we want to be the number one XYZ. And I always struggled with that because it's exactly like you said, it's what the organization wants.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between business goals and product goals. So
Mhm.
like it is okay to want to win. That is absolutely fine, but that's a business goal, that's not a product
Yeah,
goal. And it's not going to help you make any product decisions
yeah,
because if you go in, I want to be the number one XYZ, you're always thinking about yourself. But
right.
if your mission is more focused around I want to online dating, like help people find meaningful relationships, right? Whatever the case is, you need to be focused on the end user and what they want in addition to the business goals. So have them, but they come below and they
Right.
come after user value.
Absolutely. All right. Our third topic is actually my favorite one. How do we be, how can we be intentional in our career instead of chasing money and levels?
Yeah. Why is this your favorite one? What came up for you?
That's an interesting question because now that I'm full time coaching, it's definitely not about money and definitely not about level, but there is a sense of fulfillment and really connecting with people and it makes me feel like I'm making a difference and it's not related to how much I make and what my level is. Now I don't have a level.
Yeah, it's weird not being a part of the corporate machine anymore.
Yes, yes.
Uh, I think this came up for as a topic for me because as I was mentoring and as I was managing, I got so many people telling me, "Oh, I'm a level 5 and I need to be a level 6."
Yes.
Why? Why? And
Right.
they do it because it's sort of dangled in front of them. And we all do it. I did it too, right? Like someone sits in a room and they go, you're not an M2. Well, I want to be an M2, So there's like
Oh my
this
god.
desire to grow, and it's gamification of your career. I've heard people say, like, I don't even care if it comes with a raise. I just want to be this level. And I'm like,
Right.
why? Call me any role, call me janitor. I don't it doesn't matter, like it should actually be about what you're getting from it. So I saw this really interesting pattern where people are buying into some of the things that the corporations are putting out, um,
Absolutely.
myself included.
Me too.
And yeah, it's natural, right? Someone sits and they're like, "Well, if you just did 10% more work, we'd tell you you're special." And so that comes up for everybody, and it brings up some feelings as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
But what I have found makes people happier is thinking about what really matters to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I break it down into a couple of different things. And I've got some worksheets for this. One is around values. What are your values? What is important to you? Because really understanding that unlocks so many things, right? Burnout doesn't necessarily come from working too many hours. It comes from working out of line with your values.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding like what the most important things are for you. For me, those are fairness and efficiency, and to your point, meaningful work and connecting with people.
Yeah.
And that was something that I wasn't necessarily getting a lot of in my tech career, but now I think the second piece is around priorities and getting very specific and ordering them and even breaking them up at times. So, like, my number one priority is there is a certain amount of money that I need to not lose my house
Right.
and to eat dinner tonight, right?
Yeah.
And it's a much lower number than I thought it was, but I would do any job I had to get that.
Right.
I would clean the elephant cage at the zoo because I want to live here in London. I want
Yeah.
to sort of have my lifestyle.
Yeah.
After that, I think I need a little bit of peace and I need
Mhm.
some calm and some me time.
Yeah.
I need some flexibility in my schedule.
Yeah.
So by sitting down and sort of listing out these priorities in order and
Yes.
understanding, like, if I can only do one thing, if I can only
Yeah.
do two, if I can only do three, it makes it a lot easier to evaluate these opportunities. So when a promotion comes up at work, should I push for this? Is it going to help me with any of these, right? Like, on my priorities, probably not, because I already have that amount of income
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to take away my peace if I have to do 10, 20% more work. So having a chance to sort of evaluate those, I think, is very important.
When I was in that big corporate machine, I kept on chasing levels. It was not about the money because I didn't I didn't envision my lifestyle to change based on how much money, how much more I made. I've at in that point in time, my lifestyle was kind of constant. So it didn't really matter if I was making more and more and more and more. What I wanted was that title. And I just kept chasing that title, thinking that it would make me happy. And then it didn't. And then
Yeah.
I didn't understand why. And when I didn't get that level, I was very upset and very frustrated.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time. I was in that mind space for years. And I feel like a lot of it is the conditioning in that environment. Um, and then when it kind of worked in my
Yeah.
favor when I was able to get the levels. But then when it stopped working, when I was having challenges, then I felt so stuck. And then we started to question our worth. Am I even a PM? Like,
Yeah.
just like fundamental thoughts crossed my mind. And then I realized that that can't be it. Like
Yeah.
this shouldn't be how I live my life.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
I
it
think it's
took no, it took me many years to kind of go through this cycle of self-realization.
It does, yeah, and I think overachievers, I definitely fall in that camp. I know the phrase Silicon Valley is where overachievers go to feel bad about themselves.
Oh my god.
Like, really resonated, and I can't tell you how many performance reviews I've cried in. I once got promoted and I cried in the performance review, and I'm like, "This is so late and I deserved it sooner."
Oh my god.
So we get really worked up, and I understand that, but to an extent it's fake. And it's contrived, and if it's not bringing you something else, and maybe it is bringing more scope, more meaningful work,
Mhm.
and maybe you do want to run a company one day and it's getting you that experience.
Right.
So I'm not saying it's never valuable,
Yeah.
but it's often not what we make it out to be.
I love that example you just shared because I once gave a performance review and it was a promotion.
Yeah.
And then the feedback I got was, "Oh, thanks, but this doesn't mean that I'm happy because I should have gotten this a year ago." I'm thinking, I had to work so hard to get you this promotion.
I had a promotion, I saved it for last to tell them, and I'm like, "Happy Friday," and they're like, "Mm."
I know, I know. What does that tell us about the corporate world?
It's tough. I think there's stuff about the corporate world, and then there's also just things about the human brain. And so there's
Mhm.
actually some studies that are very interesting. And one is built off of like, I think it was called the blue dot study. And so they were showing you red and blue dots, and you got used to the frequency of the blue dots, and then you expected them at that level.
Mhm.
And then they extended it to happiness. And they've tracked that like everyone stays a certain amount of happy, and like something good will happen. You'll have a party or get married or a promotion,
Uh,
and then it sort of fades back out. Or there'll be a death or something bad, and then it sort
yeah.
of fades back up, and you always come back to average. So there's
Mhm.
this shelf life
Mm.
on happiness from events that
Mm.
means that it's almost never permanent and that
Mhm.
there's just sort of a constant baseline. And understanding that also means that like you can take away the I'll just be happy if this one thing
Yes,
happens.
that's right, that's
If I
right.
can just buy a house or get a promotion or
Mhm.
whatever, like nothing, no single thing is going to fix that. It's always going to revert back. And so focusing on what you want out of life and what your stasis is so valuable.
I love how you said that, focusing on what you want out of life. I just remembered, so in my last corporate job, I was building products to improve emotional connection between the product and the user. And I love that mission so much because it's something more than just focusing on engagement. It's more than growing some kind of product metric. It's digging into what connects emotionally with the user. And I love that mission so much. I wrote it down literally in my journal to say what I want next is to still work toward getting that emotional connection. And then a bunch of things happened. And now I became a coach. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm working toward that emotional connection that I intentionally wrote down in my journal as that thing that I want in my life, what brings me joy. But I would never have thought that the how is through coaching.
Yeah, that's really important. And that's why things like visioning exercises, things like values and priorities, because that's just like who you are at the core of your
Right,
being. And
right.
the more you isolate that, the faster you can intentionally get to a space where you have more of that,
So true.
instead of sitting on it for years.
So true. Oh my gosh. Is there anything else that you would want to share with other product managers who might be watching this video?
Oh yeah. I love product managers. My favorite thing
Thanks.
is how organized they are. Every time I go to like a meeting with a product manager, they're like, okay, these are our four things. And I'm like, so I think just keep harnessing that and sort of understanding what your skills are, and also start thinking about like what you want to be achieving long term, right?
I
Because it
love
is
that.
so easy to be tackling the problems people put in front of you when you are that effective at doing them that someone just throws it at you and you bat it away and throws it at you and you bat it away. But like please pause and think about where you want to go and think about what makes you happiest and make sure that you are working towards that too.
I love that. So, one last thing before we say goodbye, tell us more about your coaching services
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
how do we work with you?
Yes, I would love to work with people. So, yeah, so I'm coaching. I'm based in London, but I do it all remotely. So, you can certainly send me an email. My email is on the website and it is info@sandyconroy.co.uk. And we can set up initial trial sessions to get a sense of
Mm.
what it is you want to accomplish, where I can dedicate like a large amount of time to telling you what coaching is and then actually jumping into a live session, especially for people who've never had it before.
Right.
It's really understanding what they get from it and what that investment in themselves is.
Mhm.
So feel free to drop me an email or reach out on LinkedIn and we can see if that's the right opportunity to try a demo session and see how coaching can
Oh,
help.
that's so great. That's the QR code for us to scan, and it will bring us to your website. Is the website the best place to find you or your LinkedIn? Do you have
Wherever you're more comfortable. Yeah, the website, email, LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm available.
Yay! All right. Thank you so much, Sandy, for this conversation. I learned so much.
Thanks, Nancy. This was fun.
See you soon. Bye.